Hello, and welcome. So, I nearly forgot to set this microphone up. I just did it like as fast as I could. So, welcome. We are going to be getting into the 10th Labor of Hercules today from the Labours of Hercules, an astrological interpretation by Alice A. Bailey. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get all the way through this today, but we're getting so close. Hey, that sort of sounded like a Wookiee, didn't it? I can never seem to pull it off when I'm trying to. What? Okay. I was just having like a mini dance party, so I have a lot of energy now. Okay. Labor 10. The slaying of Cerberus, guardian of Hades. Capricorn, December 22nd to January 20th. The myth. The light of life must now shine forth within a world of dark, the great presiding one declared. The teacher understood. The Son of Man, who is also the Son of God, must pass through gate the 10th, he said. Within this very hour, Hercules shall venture forth. Then Hercules stood face to face with him, who was his guide. The latter spoke. 1,000 dangers you have braved, O Hercules, the teacher said, and much has been achieved. Wisdom and strength are yours. Will you make use of them to rescue one in agony? A prey too vast and unremitting suffering? The teacher gently touched the forehead of Hercules. Before the latter's inner eye, a vision rose. A man lay prone upon a rock and groaned as if his heart would break. His hands and legs were shackled. The massive chains that bound him were tied to iron rings. A vulture, fierce and bold, kept pecking at the prostrate victim's livers. The prostrate victim's liver. In consequence, a trickling stream of blood flowed from his side. The man lifted his manacled hands and cried out for help. But his words echoed vainly in the desolation and were swallowed by the wind. The vision faded. Hercules stood, as before, at the side of his guide. The shackled one, whom you have seen, is called Prometheus, the teacher said. For ages has he suffered thus, and yet he cannot die, being immortal. From heaven he stole the fire. For this he has been punished. The place of his abode is known as hell, the domain of Hades. Unto Prometheus, O Hercules, you are asked to be the savior. Go down unto the depths, and there upon the outer plains release him from his suffering. Having heard and understood, the Son of Man, who was also a son of God, embarked upon his quest, and passed through gate the 10th. Downward, ever downward, did he travel into the binding worlds of form. The atmosphere grew stifling, the darkness steadily more intense, and yet his will was firm. His steep descent continued long and long. Alone, yet not alone at all, he wandered on, for when he sought within, he heard the silvery voice of the wisdom goddess Athena and the strengthening words of Hermes. At length he came to that dark and envenomed river called the Styx, a river that the souls of the deceased must cross. An obelisk or penny had to be paid to Charon, the ferryman, that he might take them to the other side. The somber visitor from earth affrighted Charon, and forgetting the fee, he ferried the stranger across. Hercules at last had entered Hades, a dim and misty region where the shades, or better said, the shells of those departed, flitted by. When Hercules perceived Medusa, her hair entwined with hissing snakes, he seized his sword and thrust at her, but struck naught save empty air. Through labyrinth paths, he threaded his way until he came to the court of the king who ruled the underworld, Hades. The latter, grim and stern, with threatening mane, sat stiffly on his jet black throne as Hercules approached. What seek you, a living mortal, in my realms? Hades demanded. Hercules said, I seek to free Prometheus. The path is guarded by the monster Cerberus, a dog with 3 great heads, each of which has serpents coiled about it. Hades replied, If you can conquer him with your bare hands, a feat no one has yet performed, you may unbind the suffering Prometheus. Satisfied with this response, Hercules proceeded. Soon he saw the triple-headed dog and heard its piercing bark. Snarling, it sprang upon him. Grasping the primary throat of the Cerberus, Hercules held it in his vice-like grip. Goaded to frenzied fury, the monster thrashed about. At length, its strength subsiding, Hercules mastered it. This done, Hercules went on and found Prometheus. Upon a slab of stone he lay, in agonizing pain. Quickly Hercules then broke the chains and set the sufferer free. Retracting his steps, Hercules returned as he had come. When once again he reached the world of living things, he found his teacher there. The light now shines within the world of dark, the teacher said. The labor is achieved. Rest now, my son. That's by Francis Merchant. Hey, Love Ball in Backwoods. Welcome all. Awesome. Yes, story time. Oh, dudes, plus look, I got let me see. I'm at Prologue. I got a brand new hoodie. Oh my gosh, it's Freya. It's the goddess Freya. And like, oh, can I stand up or something? Can you see me? And like, it has cats on it and stuff. It's the Wheel of Fortune. And we just read chapter 10. Oh my gosh. All right. So yeah, the prologue. That's where we're at. I was right before I went live, I was listening to one of Queen Herbie's EPs, and I had myself in this frame here. So it was like watching my own self dance and like laughing my head off. It was really fun. I don't know, dude. Oh shit. It's like Narcissa or something. Okay. Prologue. The sign of Capricorn, says the Tibetan, is one of the most difficult signs about which to write and is the most mysterious of all the 12. So we have found it. Even the symbol of the sign has never been correctly drawn, we are told, because its correct delineation would produce an inflow of force that would be indesirable or undesirable. Wow, it's so crazy because like I've struggled to master drawing that sign. Also, this symbol is sometimes called the signature of God. Wow. This is blowing my mind. At the foot of the mountain, the goat, the materialist seeks for nourishment in arid places. The scapegoat on the way up finds the flowers of attained desire, each with its own thorn of satiety and disillusionment. At the top of the mountain, the sacred goat sees the vision, and the initiate appears. In other writings, the symbols are the goat, the crocodile, and the unicorn. The myth puts the emphasis on the descent into hell to free humanity, in the figure of the tortured Prometheus. Another deals more with Cerberus, some slaying him, others bringing him up to earth. We submit these variations for the reader's consideration of their spiritual significance. One remembers that, according to the creed, the Christ and Jesus descended into hell. Why? Surely because his all-inclusive love covered the so-called lost souls, since we are told that the Christ broods over humanity until the last little one shall have come home. And who are we to interpret the signature of God? With humility, we submit these points for pondering. We are told that it is on his knees that the Capricornian offers heart and life to the soul, and only then, when self-initiated, can he be trusted with the secrets of life and the higher powers. I'm Capricorn rising, you know? All right. Interpretations of the labor in Capricorn. There are two gates of dominant importance: Cancer, into what we erroneously call life, and Capricorn, the gate into the spiritual kingdom. Capricorn, the gate through which we finally pass when we no longer identify ourselves with the form side of existence, but become identified with the spirit. This is what it means to be initiate. An initiate is a person who is no longer placing his consciousness in his mind or desires or physical body. He can use these if he chooses, and he does, to help all humanity, but that is not where his consciousness is focused. He is focused in what we call the soul, which is that aspect of ourselves which is free from form. It is in soul consciousness that we eventually function in Capricorn, know ourselves to be initiates, and enter upon two great universal signs of service to humanity. For it is interesting that in Aquarius, we are dealing symbolically with animals in bulk, since in that sign, Hercules has the job of cleaning out the Augean stables, his first work as a world disciple. But in Pisces, he captures not the bull, but all of the oxen, carrying into our consciousness the idea of the universality of world work, of group consciousness, of universal consciousness, and of universal service. If you were born in the sign Capricorn, please do not get the idea that you are an initiate. We should lay emphasis on a sense of proportion and the status of evolution. Aspirants either suffer from an inferiority complex that makes them feel it is not possible to do anything, or they have an exaggerated idea of their importance. They have a touch of soul consciousness, but only a tiny touch, which they think is the whole thing, and they become inflated. This shows no sense of proportion. This sign symbolizes the third initiation, the first of the major initiations. In Matthew 17, we read that Christ took 3 disciples, Peter, James, and John, up into a high mountain and was transfigured before them. They fell on their faces, and Peter said, "Let us build 3 huts." In Hindu philosophy, this is called initiation of the man who builds his hut. Peter, a rock or foundation, is the symbol of the physical body. James, the deceiver, symbolizes the emotional nature, the source of all glamour. John symbolizes the mind, the name meaning, the Lord has spoken. There you have the symbolism of 3 aspects of the personality on their faces before the glorified Christ in Capricorn at his transfiguration. Wow. Meaning of the sign. This is the sign of the goat. It is a superhuman sign, a universal and impersonal sign. All the labors of Hercules heretofore have been concerned with his own liberation. Now we enter upon 3 signs that have no relation to his personal achievements. He is free. He is an initiate, a world disciple. He has passed around and around the Zodiac, learned all the lessons of the signs, and climbed the mountain of initiation. He has undergone transfiguration. He is perfectly free, and so can work universally on labors that have no relation to himself whatsoever. He works as a superhuman being in a human body. The great stages of development upon the path of expansion, which we call initiations, are recorded in the brain and will not be told to you by someone else. I never met a true initiate who was willing to admit that he was one. Never. The hallmark of the initiate is silence. Capricorn is a sad sign. It is the sign of intense suffering and loneliness. For these also are marks of the initiate. Wow. Impersonality is based upon a fundamental personality achievement. You must have been tremendously attached before you can know the meaning of impersonality. That is a paradox, but there is no achievement in being impersonal if there is no temptation to be personal. The impersonality we must develop is an expansion of the personal love we have for an individual, our family, our circle of friends, into exactly the same attitude for humanity, but it has nothing to do with the sentimentality. We can love all mankind because we know the meaning of personal love, and we must give the same love to everybody that we have given to the individuals close to us. Impersonality is not shutting yourself off, putting up walls. It is loving everyone because we are able to see people as they truly are, with their faults, their feelings, their achievements, everything that goes to make them what they are, and seeing them clear-eyed to love them just the same. In the rules of the road, it is written, each sees and knows the villainy of each, and yet there is, with that great revelation, no turning back, no spurring of each other. No spurning of each other. That is the condition to be attained in Capricorn. That which we have to develop does not come by hardening the heart, nor by tremendous detachment, nor by climbing a pedestal. I'm just going to read the quote again. Each sees and knows the villainy of each, and yet there is, with that great revelation, no turning back, no spurning of each other. The world disciple does not only do what Hercules did, go down into hell to conquer Cerberus, but he works among men all the time, interested in his fellow man. He is impersonal. I wonder if this impersonality does not refer to ourselves rather than to the other persons. We talk about being impersonal in our dealing. If we were quite impersonal in dealing with ourselves, our relations to our fellow men would be just right. Right? Yeah. Interesting thoughts. It's like, it almost feels like the opposite of knowing yourself, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just like knowing yourself more, to the point where it's like, it's not as important. Well, where the heck am I? Pedestal would be just right. Yeah, that was deep. Okay. All right. Mirror and the boomerang. Mirror in the boomerang. I'm just like, I have to spend more time thinking about that. I've never heard that before. All right. Constellations. There are 3 constellations connected with the sign Capricorn. One is called Sagitta, the arrow, Sagitta, the arrow. It has no connection with the sign Sagittarius. In that sign, we had the bowman with the arrow whereby the achieving aspirant pierced the personality. Here you have the arrow that comes from a cosmic source, piercing the heart of the Son of God, called the Christ, the nearest to us of the great world saviors. A man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. He was perceived by the arrow Sagitta, the cosmic arrow. Sagitta? I don't know. The Hebrew name for this arrow means the desolate one, and the path that every disciple treads is necessarily a lonely one. The path of the initiate is more lonely still. The path of a world savior is the most lonely of all. I think that this condition is going to be alleviated. Down the ages, we have had these tremendous comings out, one here, one there. Have you ever considered their loneliness? They have none who understood. Perhaps they were canonized hundreds of years after they died, but now there are so many aspirants, so many upon the path of discipleship, that perhaps the group consciousness, which is beginning to demonstrate in world affairs, will result in a group loneliness rather than an individual loneliness. Wow, this is so deep. Aquila, the eagle, is regarded as being a closely related, is related as being as closely related to Capricorn as to Sagittarius. You have the bird of light, a symbol of the highest aspect of man, manifesting as the soul, the second aspect, which has achieved. In Delphinus, you have a very interesting constellation that holds in it an amazing piece of symbolism. It is pictured in an ancient zodiac as a fish full of life, leaping out of the water into the air and playing. That is the symbol of the Son of God, who, working under the law, takes form and lives in the water and in the air. And since he is no longer held by the physical law, he can play with the forces of nature. We are beginning to learn about these forces, but it will be some time yet before Delphinus, the dolphin, will have much personal significance for us. I love you too. Oh my gosh, I love you, Jenny. Welcome. Oh my gosh. This is awesome. The climbing of the mountain. Capricorn tells the story of the climbing of the mountain and of the descent into hell. There are three great ascensions of every soul. Masonry down the ages has been a custodian of this tradition. First, there is a rising of matter into heaven. We find that in Virgo. Then there is a rising up of the psychic nature from below the diaphragm. You are no longer emotional and self-centered, living in the solar plexus, but are focused in the heart and are conscious of the group. Your feelings and desires are related to the group. You no longer live in the animal nature, interested in creation on the physical plane, but you become a spiritual creature working in mental matter. You are no longer held by form, but have so dealt with it that you have raised it to the head consciousness, and from the head you control your throat, your heart, your solar plexus, and every part of your body. You do this not by centering on them, not by thinking about them, but by living as a conscious Son of God seated on the throne between the eyebrows. The ajna center, or pituitary gland, as the Hindus name it. That is the second great ascension. The final ascension is that which marks the emancipation of the initiate of very high degree, who becomes consciously a world savior. But it is the second initiation, the raising up of the lower psyche nature, on which we have to work so that every desire, mood, and every emotion is lifted up to heaven. Oh, excuse me. Preparation. Okay, let's try that again. Preparation for the descent into Hades. There were three things that Hercules had to do before starting down into hell. The order in which they came is interesting. First, he had to purify himself. Hercules, the son of God, who had triumphed, been transfigured, was going down into hell to work, and the word came to purify himself. He thought he was so pure. How he underwent the process of purification, we are not told, but I have the idea that he had to demonstrate freedom from irritability and selfishness in that uninteresting circle where he was living as a human being. It is a rule in occultism that, on the ladder of initiation, if you cannot live purely in your own home circle, You are of no use in heaven or hell. What do I mean by pure? We use the word largely in its physical sense, but pure really is freedom from the limitations of matter. If I am in any way imprisoned even by my mind, which is a form of subtle matter, I am not pure. If I have any selfish emotions, I am not pure. Hercules had to purify himself. Wow. Then we read that he had to be initiated into the mysteries. As far as I can understand it, and I may be wrong, this means that you go through your own personal hell before you can go through the universal hell. Wow. This next sentence. You have a terrible time in your own life, and you are initiated as you undergo your own hell. You learn the nature of the universal by individual experience. Only that is realization. You cannot learn by hearsay. As has happened before in the myths, Hercules then had to pause and perform an act of service before he could advance upon Cerberus. He saw two people bound and being attacked by cattle. He had to deliver them before he could meet his own problem. Always, for the initiate, service comes first. The letting go of what he has set himself to do, if there is need to help. That is the story of the initiate always, because it is based on group consciousness. Right? The symbol of Cerberus. The three-headed dog Cerberus, with a terrific bark, with snakes growing out all over his body, and with snakes for a tail, was the guardian of Hades. The three heads symbolize sensation, desire, and good intentions. It is love of sensation that drives humanity hither and thither to satisfy hunger in the economic world or to satisfy desire for happiness in the world of pleasure. The violent impacts of sensation are sought to keep the mind occupied. The violent impacts. Wow. The central head was grasped by Hercules first because it was the most important, since desire underlines all sensations. It is what desire seeks to express and so gain satisfaction in the outer world. The third head is good intentions not carried out. So you have desire in the center. On one side, you have sensation, typifying all impacts, and on the other side, the third head of good intentions, not thought through. Good intentions not thought through. Never performed, of which it has long been said, hell is paved with good intentions. Wow, right? It's crazy how things take on new meanings. Perspective. The tail made of serpents typifies all illusions that impede the progress of spiritual life. The materiality that holds us down, the lower psychic nature that causes such destruction, fear along every possible line, the fear of failure, which holds so many back from activity and breeds only inertia, the great fault, we are told, of aspirants and disciples. You know, Hercules grasped Cerberus by the central head and conquered him, because all sun gods are occupied with the problems of humanity, and because desolate they go down into hell alone to save humanity. Hence, all sun gods are born in the sign of Capricorn. That's a lecture by Alice A. Bailey, condensed and edited. Yeah, I think everyone should take a listen to this book, Jenny. Oh my gosh, or take a read. It's very good. So, the epilogue. The great swing in Capricorn is epitomized by the key words. Upon the ordinary wheel, these are, and the word said, let ambition rule and let the door stand wide. This is the key to the evolutionary urge and the secret of rebirth, the Tibetan. When a true sense of reality supersedes both earthly and spiritual ambition, the man can say with truth, "Lost am I in light supernatural, yet on that light I turn my back." Light supernal. Lost am I in light supernal, yet on that light I turn my back. So goes the world disciple, initiate in Capricorn, on his way to serve humanity in Aquarius. In that sign, he cleans the Augean stables of the karma of all past ignorance and error, the dweller on the threshold, and so becomes in Pisces a world savior. One remembers that the last act of the Christ on his way to Gethsemane and Calvary was to wash the feet of his disciples. It has been said, Christianity has not failed. It has never been tried. Are we now, after 2,000 years, really beginning to try individually and in group formation? This is the work that makes it possible for the Christ to reappear, and also which prepares humanity to recognize him and to be able to endure the quality of the emanations that attend this coming. That's from Amplification of Esoteric Astrology, page 153 to 147. Let every man remember that the destiny of mankind is incomparable and that it depends greatly on his will to collaborate in the transcendent task. Let him remember that the law is and always has been to struggle, and that the fight has not lost nothing of its violence by being transposed from the material onto the spiritual plane. Let him remember that his own dignity, his nobility as a human being, must emerge from his efforts to liberate himself from his bondage and to obey his deeper aspirations. Let him, above all, never forget that the divine spark is in him alone, and that he is free to disregard it, to kill it, or to come closer to God by showing his eagerness to work with him and for him. Ooh. Le Comte du Noy, which I think Comte means count, which I just recently learned. Sweet. Dang, though, I do have this frog in my throat. I just ate breakfast. Or I guess technically it was lunch. I was busy at work this morning. Okay, so we are going into Labor 11. Bollocks. Cleansing the Augean stables. Labor 11. This is Aquarius, January 21st to February 19th. The myth. Within the place of peace, the great presiding one poured forth the radiance of his exalted thought. The teacher drew nigh. The single flame must light the other 49, the great presiding one affirmed. So be it, the teacher answered. Having lit his own lamp, Hercules must now bring the light to others. Not long thereafter, the teacher summoned Hercules. 11 times the wheel has turned, and now you stand before another gate. For long you have pursued the light which flickered first uncertainly, then waxed to a steady beacon, and now shines for you like a blazing sun. Turn now your back upon the brightness. Reverse your steps. Go back to those for whom the light is but a transient point, and help them make it grow. Direct your steps to Augeas, whose kingdom must be cleansed of ancient evil. I have spoken. Forth went Hercules through gate the 11th in search of Augeas the king. When Hercules approached the realm where Augeas was the ruler, a horrid stench that made him faint and weak assailed his nostrils. For years, he learned, King Augeas had never cleared away the dung his castle left within the royal stables. Then, too, the pastures were so amply dunged, no crops could grow. In consequence, a blighting pestilence was sweeping through the land, wreaking havoc with human lives. To the palace then went Hercules and sought out Augeas. Informed that Hercules would cleanse the stenchy stables, Augeas displayed distrust and disbelief. You say that you will do this mighty task without reward, the king declared suspiciously. I have no faith in those who make such boasts. Some cunning plan you have contrived, O Hercules, to take my throne from me. Of men who seek to serve the world without a recompense, I have not heard. At this point, though, I'd welcome any fool who sought to help. But a bargain must be struck, lest I be chided as a foolish king. If you, within a single day, shall do what you have promised, 1/10 of my great flock of cattle shall be yours. But if you fail, your life and fortune will be in my hands. Of course, I do not think you can fulfill your boast, but try you may. Sassy king, sassy dirty king. Hercules then left the king. He wandered through the blighted place and saw a cart go by, piled high with dead, the victims of the pestilence. 2 rivers he observed, the Alpheus and the Peneus, flowed quietly nearby. Standing on the banks of one, the answer to his problem flashed upon his mind. With might and main he labored. By great exertions, he succeeded in diverting both these streams from courses they had followed for decades. The Alpheus and the Peneus were made to pour their waters through the dung-filled stables of King Augeas. The rushing torrents swept away the long accumulated filth. The realm was purged of all its fetid murk. Within a single day, the task impossible had been performed. When Hercules, quite satisfied with this result, returned to Augeas, the latter scowled. You have succeeded by a trick, King Augeas cried out in rage. The rivers did the work, not you. It was a ruse to take from me my cattle, a plot against my throne. Rewards you shall not have. Go, get you hence ere I cut down your stature by a head. The angry king thus banished Hercules and bade him never more set foot within his realm on penalty of sudden death. Having performed the task assigned, the Son of Man, who was also the Son of God, went back to him from whom he came. A server of the world you have become, the teacher said, when Hercules drew nigh. You have gone on by going back. You have come to the house of light by yet another path. You have spent your light that the light of others might shine. The jewel that the 11th labor gives is yours forevermore. By Francis Merchant. The Energies of Aquarius, lecture by Alice A. Bailey, 1937. There is a phrase in the New Testament, the end of the world. It is just beginning to dawn upon many of us that what was really meant was that the sign Pisces, in which Christ, the great world savior, came, would end at a particular date, and we are right in that time now. We are not facing a judgment day in which the sheep and goats will be divided, and some go to heaven and others go to hell. Many ridiculous interpretations have been put upon the symbolism of the Bible. It has been thought that the sheep went to heaven and the goats went to hell. It is the other way around. The goat in Capricorn is the initiate, and from a certain esoteric angle, the goats do go to heaven because they function in the spiritual kingdom, which is heaven. The sheep remain on earth, which, after all, is the only hell one can possibly predicate, until they are no longer sheep, until they learn to have individual thought, become goats, climb the mountain, and exchange the position of follower to that of independent seekers. Entrance into heaven is entrance into the Aquarian age, begun during the last 200 years. We are told that about the year 2000, our pole star and another star, Vega, in the heavens will be in conjunction with each other, and the Aquarian age will be fully with us, but only fully with us in the sense that we shall be entering it, and Piscean forces will be receding rapidly. All that transpires in physical plane expression is due to subjective forces. A school of thought exists which traces all the mysteries, all the teachings that we are now calling the ageless wisdom, to a form of animal worship and temple mysteries of a sordid and sexual kind. I shall not go into detail, but I want to tell you what I think is of vital interest for us to grasp, because it is something in the Aquarian age which will be emerging in greater fullness right along. It is one thing to be subjected to blind force. It is another to have an intelligent outlook upon what is happening and to understand and look for certain occurrences. Perhaps for the first time in the history of our race, there is a sufficient number of intelligent men and women to anticipate happenings with an understanding based on what has transpired in the past, so enabling them to predicate what will happen in the future. What caused the worship of the bull in Taurus? Not not the bestial nature of humanity that took the bull as a symbol of the animal nature and defied it, which is what the average human being who investigate the mysteries says. It is because there were subjective forces playing upon our planet as our sun passed through the sign Taurus. The lesson for man is that under the symbol of the bull, he had to wrestle with the animal in himself. Then our sun passed into Aries, the ram, and we had the sacrifice of the lamb, showing that the sacrifice of the animal nature was beginning to succeed the concept of wrestling with the animal nature. Then the sun passed into Pisces, the fishes. The forces that played upon our planet at that time brought into the consciousness of man his essential duality and the link between the two parts of himself, two fishes linked by a band. This consciousness, on the large scale, began to make its impact upon the human being, i.e., that he is soul and body. Christ came in Pisces to demonstrate to us perfectly what would be our ultimate achievement when we had linked those two together. The fish, the symbol of the second person, the fish avatar, and the fish swimming in matter, the symbol of the human being in incarnation. There you have the story. Having traced Having traced that wonderful, idealistic, evolutionary teaching down the last 5 to 6,000 years as the result of subjective forces playing upon humanity, we are now passing into the sign Aquarius, where, through symbolism of water and purification, we shall learn how to be the soul and not the human being. That is what is going to happen in Aquarius. At the end of the Aquarian age, approximately 2,500 years hence, you can picture what humanity will can you picture what humanity will be like? The animal nature, the emotional nature, and the mentality will be secondary. And the soul, the consciousness aspect, that universal urge in each of us that puts us en rapport with God, will have surged to the front. Putting it another way, we shall have left behind the human kingdom, and though we may be inhabiting bodies, our consciousness will be focused in the fifth kingdom of nature, the spiritual kingdom. That is the prophecy, the thing that lies ahead for humanity in 2,500 years' time. The opposite sign to Aquarius is Leo, the sign of the individual, the man who has found himself as a human being. He stood upon his own feet. He was the center of his universe. The stars revolved around him. Everything happened in relation to himself. By that, he learned certain great lessons. That it was just possible he was not as important as he thought, and that by subjecting himself to certain training, he could find a larger self. And so he passed on into Scorpio, where he was tested to see how much persistence he had. The outstanding characteristic of the aspirant is endurance, and the sign that calls for the utmost endurance is Scorpio. He triumphs in Scorpio, and in Sagittarius becomes the one-pointed disciple who, having put his hand to the plow, cannot turn back. He may want to, but he cannot turn back. He goes on, and because he goes on, he climbs to the top of the mountain in Capricorn and undergoes the transfiguration. In Aquarius, the disciple becomes the serving master. We shall take up the subject of world saviors in Pisces. In Aquarius, the man is a serving master. That is the key note I want you to hold in your minds. He can be a master because he has learned to serve, and he can serve because he is a master. Those two go together. The ruler of the first decadent of Aquarius is Saturn. Saturn gives us discipline. Saturn opens for us the door of opportunity. Saturn, through spiritual exercises and trials, strengthens our spiritual muscles and enables us to emerge out of darkness into light. Hallmarks of the initiate. Hercules, being the initiate, is pledged to do three things, which can be summed up as the outstanding characteristics of all true initiates. If they are not present in some measure, the man is not an initiate. 1. Unselfish service. This is not the service that we render because we are told that service is a way to liberation, but service rendered because our consciousness is no longer self-centered. We are no longer interested in ourselves, but our consciousness being universal, there is nothing for us to do but to assimilate the troubles of our fellow men and help them. It is no effort for the true Aquarian master to do so. 2. Group work. Dang, you know what? I'm just going to have a big old cough fit, and then I'm going to get right into 2. I'll be right back. I don't know if that helped. Hallmarks. Okay, yeah, number 2. Group work. This is something that we know little about as yet. The world is full of organizations and societies, brotherhoods that are happy training grounds for ambitious people. I do not mean to be unkind, but my experience with the average group is that it is a hotbed of jealousies, people trying to impress the others with the amount of their knowledge and the wonder of their self-sacrificing lives. This is not group work. Group work is standing alone spiritually in the handling of one's own affairs with complete forgetting of one's own self and affairs in the welfare of the particular section of humanity with which we are associated. It negates ambition. It negates the process upward in any lodge or organization. It negates all assuming of official prerogatives. I do not think the new groups will have any officials, but will work automatically because of the intuitional spiritual interplay between the minds of the units and the group. We do not know anything about it yet. Can you think of a group so united on spiritual levels that letters, pamphlets, books, etc., can be done away with? That the intercommunication between the minds of the members of the group is perfect? That is the Aquarian group, and it is not with us yet. 3. Self-sacrifice. The meaning of self-sacrifice is making the body whole, making the self holy. That deals with the self of the group and the self of the individual. That is the work of the initiate. From the top of the mountain in Capricorn, Hercules has to come down literally into material filth and clean the Augean stables. I want to give you an idea of his psychology. He had climbed up to the top of a mountain. He had passed all the great tests, passed from Capricorn into the spiritual kingdom, and knew somewhat the significance of mystical ecstasy. And in that highly spiritual state, he received word to go down and clean the stables. What an anticlimax. No great world work, but to clean stables. The object of the test can be summed up in this way. Hercules had to aid in the cleansing of the world by the right direction of the forces of life through it. You appreciate that we are entering into the Aquarian age where materialism, as we know it, will have completely died out at the close, and when the whole life will be interpreted in terms of energies. We are dealing entirely with forces. We shall probably have a new language, the symbolic language of energy itself. We shall all be practical occultists, the occultist who lives and works in a world of forces and who begins with the forces within himself. You will get a little understanding of what is meant by the wielding of forces if you watch your speech. Why do you raise your voice when emoting? Because the energy sweeping through you has an effect upon your vocal apparatus. You are dealing with energies and you are misusing energies. Watch yourself and begin to work in the world of forces within yourself. This sign inaugurates the school of world saviors. It is almost a John the Baptist sign, a sign of preparation for what the next Piscean age is going to bring in. Aquarius is depicted as a man holding the inverted vase. The man invents the vase, and out of it comes two streams of water, the river of life and the river of love. And those two worlds, love and life, are the two worlds that embody the technique of the Aquarian age. Not form, not mind, but life and love. Two words we use constantly, but which, back of them, do not bear any adequate concept. All right, decadence, rulers and constellations. Aquarius, like other signs, is divided into 3 decadents. We are now entering the first decadent governed by Saturn. Hence our present difficulties, our political upheaval, the dividing of the world stage into great groups, with people who are national, patriotic, and those who are beginning to vision the international spirit. In the churches, in the religious field, division again between those who are getting a picture of the universality of love in God, love of God, and those who bow to authority and dogma. In the field of economics, a tremendous turmoil is brought about by Saturn between those who bow to material things and those who are letting them go in order to get the better things, between those who grab possessions for themselves, those who hoard and keep, and those who let go in order to acquire what Christ calls treasures in heaven. In almost any field of thought, we find these two compelling forces because of the impact of Piscean and Aquarian energies. There are 2 diverse groups, those who are tied to the past and to the material aspect, and those who are getting the vision and are seeing the life, the consciousness, the purpose, and the plan emerging through the medium of them all. The wonderful thing, if you study the world intuitively, if you keep a pace with what is going on in this and other sections of humanity, is that you will see that, in spite of superficial disturbances and dire happenings, the spirit of man is sound and pure, is rising to the occasion, and we are coming through. But don't think it will be in a week or a year. It may get better. We may get better conditions, improvements here, there, and everywhere. It is up to us how fast we learn the lesson of how to let go, in order that the Piscean age of materialism and of authority, possession, and mentality can be superseded by the age of spirituality, of intuition, and of universal consciousness. The second decadent of Aquarius is governed by Mercury, and out of the present time will come illumination. The illumination that came in Leo, the opposite of Aquarius, was I am the self. The illumination we call self-consciousness. Illumination coming in Aquarius is I am that. I am group conscious. My self-consciousness has dropped away. My individuality is of no importance. My personality is only mechanism. And my consciousness is one with all that is. In the third decadent, governed by Venus, we have the emergence of inclusive love. About 2,000 years from now, we may really express brotherly love. It will be, must be, a manifested fact before humanity as a whole can pass into Capricorn. They will enter that sign in a loving spirit. The individual aspirant cannot take initiation until he has learned to love disinterestedly, to love not only those who think as he does and act as he desires. Yay, Chrissy! Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. I've been thinking about you as we're reading about Aquarius, my girl. This is perfect. The lawgivers. There are two lawgivers in the zodiac, Regulus and Cephas. In Leo, we have one of the four royal stars, Regulus, the lawgiver, the law for the individual, the law of selfishness, if you like, the law of competition, the law that sets every man against his fellow man, the law that makes him grab and grasp, the law under which we live, the law of competition. Regulus, the law of the individual, has to give place to Cephas, the law of Aquarius, where we shall have a new law based on suffering, illumination, and love. It would be interesting to see how far you yourself can grasp what those types of law will be, based upon the suffering of the individual that has led him to lose interest in himself. When you have suffered enough, you do not care about yourself anymore. You find that the only way to happiness is not to be free from suffering, but to lose yourself in something outside yourself. Wow. Hmm. The Aquarian law is based on spiritual illumination, on intuitive perception and brotherly love, which is identification with every form in every kingdom in nature. A tremendous future lies ahead. 2,500 years will have been consummated. We are on our way. Remember, the more rarefied the forms through which the life is acting, the more rapid the reaction. That is why we have this tremendous speed in every department of life, why we are all so strung up. We have Piscean bodies, and we are trying to vibrate to the Aquarian age. We are not Aquarians yet. There are not there are no true Aquarians. We are not yet equipped. For that age, some of the children coming in have the earmarks, but even they are few and far between. The Aquarian age is going to manifest over the whole world. There will be Aquarians born everywhere, because there is the working out of the subjective spirit in every part of the planet. It is possible that in America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, there will be focal points of the energy. But what will really happen is the coming into incarnation all over the world in every kingdom of nature of those human beings and other forms of life, all merging under the new Aquarian influence. A marvelous thing is taking place. Let us get the world ready so that our children and children's children can see it all happen. Christ sounded the note for the time to end, for the time of the end, when he said, "The new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another." The 11th commandment, 11th sign, is the only now we are discovering what a marvelous astrologer Christ was. He knew that the cycle he inaugurated would pass away, that a new method of work would have to emerge whereby the masters would employ a new mode of reaching humanity, but he prepared the way for his own later work. There are three constellations in Aquarius: the southern fish, Pisces Australes, picturing in connection with the Aquarius, the coming world saviors. Note that here, in the culmination of Pisces, we have one fish, the avatar, not the two fishes banded together. The second constellation is Pegasus, the winged horse. ever the inspiring symbol of the higher mind, love, spurning the earth, at home on the air. On the lower level, we are reminded of the winged feet of Mercury, ever wings of the mind, remembering also that one definition of love is the cold, clear light of reason. Wow. The cold, clear light of reason is love. The third constellation takes yet a further flight, for we have Cygnus, the swan, flying in mid-heaven. The swan of eternity, flying in time and space, is the symbol of life itself, the cleansing, purifying, living waters of Aquarius. Interpolated. That's what it says at the bottom of that. Interpolated. Interpretation of the test. Augeas, the son of Neptune. Oh my gosh, Augeas is the son of Neptune? I think I even said that earlier. What a bitch. All right, wait. Augeas, the son of Neptune, the god of the waters and the sun, kept herds of animals, and for 30 years the stables had not been cleaned, so that the filth had accumulated. Hercules was told to do something about it. Many people had attempted to clean the stables and failed. It was always beyond them. Hercules, being an initiate and having much common sense, which real initiates always have, went down from the mountaintop and contemplated the problem. He studied the stables. First, he broke down the wall that surrounded the stables. Then he made 2 great holes in its opposite sides and turned 2 rivers through them. He did not try to sweep and clean, as others had, but he broke down barriers by using 2 rivers. Without effort on his part, the stables were cleaned. Very pleased with himself, Hercules rushed off to Augeas and shouted, "I have cleaned the stables. They are perfectly clean." And we read that Augeas turned his back on him, refused to recognize what he had done, and said it was a trick. It might be said that the emotional desire nature of that great life in whom we live and move and have our being also keeps herds of animals that answer to the name of human beings. To my mind, the word God, 3 little letters, is just a symbol. I do not pretend to know what it is a symbol of, but I do know it stands for me as a symbol of a life that is immanent in all forms and transcendent also. I am one of the herd animals that has been kept by Augeas, and the stables in which the animals dwelt have not been cleaned for 30 years, 3 multiplied by 10, and 3 is the number of the personality, and 10 is the number of completion. What if I told you now, in your day and mine, for the first time, it says day and mine, M-I-N-E. Maybe it's supposed to be. What if I told you now, in your day and mine, for the first time, humanity is a coordinated, complete unit with mind, emotional nature, and physical body functioning as one, and that the stables have not been cleaned for 30 years? Whoa. What are the 2 things that Hercules did? He broke down the barriers. That is the first thing that has to happen in the Aquarian age. We are just beginning to do it. We are just beginning to think in broad terms, to leave off being exclusive. Emerging in the world are groups of men and women everywhere who are wrestling with themselves in order to be inclusive in their thought, because in the Aquarian age, nations as we know them now will have to go. Nations fighting for themselves and for what they want. Nation against nation. The cultivation of patriotism, which is frequently the cultivation of hatred. We have to teach people that they are human beings with certain responsibilities, yes. But we can begin to get a larger picture, develop the consciousness of humanity as a whole. As Browning said, mankind made up of all the single men, in such a unity the picture ends. Ooh, awesome. You should totally get them, dude. Get them. I was just talking about Nike today at work, by the way. I called this kid Nike. I couldn't get his attention. I was just trying to get him more drink. And then I was like, hey, Nike. Oh, hey, Kimba. Awesome. I almost missed your name. Okay. So the quote was, mankind made up of all the single men, in such a unity the picture ends. That is going to happen in Aquarius. That is what lies ahead. That is what the United Nations, movements for international peace, and other groups in religious, political, and economic fields are working for. The breaking down of prejudice and learning to think in general terms, in wholes. The breaking down of barriers on a large scale has to be brought about by public opinion. And this is of slow growth and largely emotional. That is the trouble. In the Aquarian age, especially in the second decadent, when Mercury, the messenger from the soul to the brain via the mind, is ruling, we will have public opinion molded by thought and not by emotion, and we shall have the world full of thinkers. The function of those who write and think along these lines, and there are thousands everywhere in the world, is to begin to think constructively along right lines so that the foundations will be well laid for the force pouring in. We build for the future. Inclusive consciousness does not mean humanly conscious. It is more, you must become time conscious. The time is coming in Aquarius when past, present, and future will pass out altogether, and you will always have the eternal present that will include every sphere and aspect of consciousness, which we can call strictly human. Ooh. Hey, Singe. Hey, dude, welcome. That is the position of the humanist, as I interpret it. He takes the position, let us be truly human, before we attempt to be superhuman. We are now only emotional, watery, fluidic creatures that are as yet unilluminated, struggling with separativeness. We are not able to be world conscious, to be en rapport with every phase of human thought. We shall be someday. We shall be someday. Let me ask a question. Are you able to enter intelligently, sympathetically, and understandingly into the consciousness of the immediate members of your family and know why they think as they do, understanding why they act in a particular way under a particular condition? Cultivate the Aquarian spirit of leaving people free. Cultivate the capacity of trust. Cut out distrust of all with whom you associate. Believe in them, and they will not let you down. Impute wrong motives, and they will let you down, and it will be your own fault. Let us be as fair as we can with the light we have. Let us cultivate the Aquarian spirit of non separativeness, love, understanding, intelligence, free from authority, drawing out of every human being we meet the best that is in them. And if you do not draw out of them the best in them, blame yourself and not them. That is the truth. If a person misinterprets you, it is because you are not clear. Self reference is always necessary for the Aquarian, but not that self consciousness that we find now. When we have broken down barriers of separativeness, then we let in the two rivers, the water of life and the river of love. I cannot talk about those two rivers because I do not know what they are. Many talk about life and love. They use words. I do not know what life is, and we certainly do not know what love is. It is interesting to try to express yourself, what you understand by the river of life and the river of love, which, by breaking down the walls, flow through the human family. We are entering increasingly into the age of energy, entering into the age of love. Do you appreciate that a great hole was made in walls during the war, and that since the war, life and energy have come to mean something more than they did before? When you have done all you can to break down the walls and to express life and love, aided by your own soul, whose nature is love wisdom, do not look for recognition. You won't get it. The hard task of the pioneer in any field of thought, of any person who is endeavoring to express the new ideals, is always non recognition and sometimes worse. You won't be praised. You won't be pitied. You will have a difficult time, but remember, you are hewing the path so that in the future, hatred and separation may die out. Dang, that's powerful. I like to think of Aquarians as the John the Baptist sign in terms of the initiate. We are leaving Pisces in one respect, and we are headed towards the Piscean era in another respect, when the world savior will come. And as we look upon the Aquarian age as a John the Baptist sign, so we can look upon ourselves in our own fields, wherever we may be, in view of the cosmic picture, doing all we can at this particular time. We are fulfilling the function of John the Baptist and preparing the way for that extraordinary happening that is going to take place individually when the world savior will again emerge and humanity will learn the next great truth and step forward and up. Alice A. Bailey. Ooh. Bam. I love it. Oh, 111. I just cut the 111. I've already cut 111 like 3 times today. So yeah, how many pages left in this book? I want to finish it out. Wow, we're gonna do it! Yay! All right. Okay, all right. Into the 12th and final labor. The capture of the red cattle of Geryon. I hope I'm saying it right. Pisces, February 20th to March 20th. Yeah, my mom's birthday. First day of spring. Okay, the myth. Within the sacred council chamber, or wait, I know there's a lot of motorcycles. It's nice. It got really nice outside today. Can you guys hear me all right? There's a lot of motorcycle noises going on. I'm just going to keep going. Whatever, right? Hopefully you can hear me. Within the sacred council chamber, the great presiding one revealed unto the teacher the will of what must be. Lost is he and found, dead, yet vibrant with life. The server becomes the savior, and homeward turns. The teacher pondered. Then he called for Hercules. Before the last gate now you stand, the teacher said. One labor yet remains before the circle is complete and liberation is attained. Proceed to that dark place called Erythia, where great illusion is enthroned, where Geryon, the monster of 3 heads, 3 bodies, and 6 hands, is lord and king. Unlawfully he holds a herd of dark red cattle. From Erythia to our sacred city must you drive his herd. Beware of Urichian, Eurytion, Urichian. Beware of Urichian, the shepherd, and his 2-headed dog, Orthus. He paused. One caution I can give, he added slowly. Invoke the aid of Helios. Through gate the 12th, the Son of Man, who was also the Son of God, departed. In search of Geryon he went. Geryon? Within a temple, Hercules made offerings to Helios, the god of fire in the sun. For 7 days he meditated, and then a favor was bestowed upon him. A golden chalice fell upon the ground just before his feet. He knew within himself that this bright object would enable him to cross the seas to reach the land of Erythia. And so it was. Within the safe protection of the golden chalice, he sailed across the tossing seas until he came to Erythia. Upon a strand in that far country, Hercules debarked. Not long thereafter, he came upon the pasture land where the red-hued cattle grazed. Guarded were they by the shepherd Urichian and the double-headed dog Orthus. When Hercules approached, the dog sped forward like an arrow to its target. Upon the visitor, the creature hurled itself, snarling viciously, its bared fangs fiercely snapping. With one decisive blow did Hercules lay the monster low. Then Urichian, fearful of the brave warrior who stood before him, supplicated that his life be spared. Hercules conceded his request. Driving the blood-red cattle before him, Hercules turned his face towards the sacred city. Not far had he gone when he perceived a distant cloud of dust that rapidly grew larger. Surmising that the monster Geryon had come in mad pursuit, he turned to face his foe. Soon Geryon and Hercules stood face to face. Breathing fire and flame from all three heads at once, the monster came upon him. Geryon hurled a spear at Hercules that almost hit its mark. Stepping agilely aside, Hercules evaded the deadly shaft. Stretching taut his bow, Hercules let fly an arrow that seemed to burn the air as he released it, and struck the monster squarely on his side. With such great impetus had it been shot that all three bodies of fierce Geryon were pierced. With a shrill, despairing groan, the monster swayed, then fell, never more to rise. Toward the sacred city, then, Hercules drove the sleek red cattle. Difficult was the task. Again and yet again some cattle strayed, and Hercules would leave the herd in search of errant wanderers. Across the Alps he drove his cattle, and into Italy. Wherever wrong had triumphed, he dealt the powers of evil and deadly blow, and righted the balance in favor of justice. When Eryx, the wrestler, challenged him, Hercules cast him down so forcefully that there he stayed. Again, when the giant Alcyoneus threw a rock that weighed a ton at Hercules, the latter caught it on his club and hurled it back to kill the one who sent it forth. At times he lost his way, but always Hercules turned back, retraced his steps, and journeyed on. Though wearied by his most exacting labor, Hercules at last returned. The teacher awaited his coming. "Welcome, O Son of God, who is also the Son of Man," he greeted the returning warrior. "The jewel of immortality is yours. By these 12 labors have you overcome the human and put on the divine. Home have you come. No more to leave. Upon the starry firmament your name shall be inscribed, a symbol to the struggling sons of men of their immortal destiny. The human labors ended, your cosmic tasks begin." Ooh. From out the council chamber came a voice that said, "Well done, O Son of God." Francis Merchant. Dang. Interpretation of the story. There are several variations of the myth concerning the labor of Hercules in the sign Pisces. We are told that there was an island where lived a human monster called Geryon with a body of 3 men united. He had a herd of red cattle guarded by a shepherd and a two-headed dog. Hercules received orders. Pisces is the sign of obedience to bring these cattle from the island across land and water to the sacred city. Hercules sailed to the island in a golden cup, and when he arrived there, he climbed to the top of a mountain and spent the night in prayer. Then he killed the two-headed dog, but he did not kill the shepherd. He also killed the owner of the red cattle. There is a beautiful part. Oh, here is the beautiful part of the story. Hercules placed all of the cattle in the golden cup, in which he had sailed over to the island, took them to the sacred city, and offered them in sacrifice to Athena, goddess of wisdom. This sacred city consisted of two towns connected by a wonderful wall and a gateway called the Gateway of the Lion. After the cattle were delivered, Hercules' work was over. We hear no more about him, but he may have gone on to greater cosmic work. Let us think of Hercules as a world savior. He has had a vision of something he has to do. He sees humanity owned by a master, a three-bodied man, the symbol of a human being with mental, emotional, and physical bodies united. I think that this labor has not yet been completed. This accomplishment lies ahead. There have been other sons of men gathered out of the human family from time to time, one here and there, a group here, another there, as when the Buddha was on the earth, and it is said that he saved 900. Now humanity, the human monster, is ready for salvation, and the real work of the world savior can begin as a whole, with the group concept underlying the work rather than individual soul saving. The symbolism of the red cattle is plainly that of the lower desires, desire being ever an outstanding characteristic of humanity. They are guarded by a shepherd, which is the mind, the two-headed dog representing the matter aspect and the psychic nature. You see why Hercules spared the shepherd. The mind can still be the shepherd of the cattle, but the two-headed dog, the psychic emotional nature, and the matter aspect, Hercules killed, which means that they were deprived of any power. The shepherd skill had power, and I can conceive of no time in which a human being in incarnation will not need to use the mind as the interpreter of spiritual energy. If Jesus, as a human being and report with his soul, becomes a transmitter of light to the sons of men, so we can extend the concept and think of humanity as a whole, with all minds held steady in the light, transmitting to lower kingdoms in nature that spiritual energy which will raise them up into heaven. That is the work of humanity. We are so occupied with our own problems that we forget the larger picture. It is to be noted again that the keeper of the cattle, the form aspect, was also killed, but the shepherd and the cattle were raised up into the golden cup. Here you have the Holy Grail. And so the work was accomplished. The world savior had fulfilled his function. He had lifted up humanity. That is what the world saviors have done. They all did what? To a greater extent Christ did. They all did what to a greater extent Christ did. Okay, I see. We hear about the failure of Christianity. I do not see failure anywhere in the great plan. Perhaps slowness, but do you know how disastrous it would be if evolution were too rapid? How dangerous it would be if people were overestimated before they were ready? All teachers know the dangers of overstimulation, the disasters that occur when a person makes certain contacts before the mechanism is sufficiently tuned up. World saviors have to work slowly, but time means nothing to them. The term world savior has until now been associated with the thought of the emergence of a great Son of God out of the Father's home, called by the need of humanity to do a great work. Down the ages, they have come, dwelt in physical bodies, worked through an emotional nature, and have been exceedingly intelligent. They have by their lives set an example that we may follow in their steps. By their words, they have sounded the note, the message that humanity needed in order to take the immediate next step forward. In their acts, they have given a demonstration of service, gone about the world doing good, and their names have stayed with us down the ages. You must be a very dominant figure to remain in the minds of men for thousands of years. Most of us are forgotten in 20. Significant aspect of the sign. The sign Pisces marks a triangular place in the heavens, a symbol of reality. This sign rules the feet, and hence the idea of treading the path and attaining the goal has been the underlying spiritual revelation of the Piscean age. Pisces is also the sign of death in various aspects. The death of the body sometimes, or it may be that an old foolishness has come to an end, an undesirable friendship will cease, devotion to some religious form of thought that has held you will now end, and you will emerge and set your feet upon a new path. It is the sign of death to the personality. If we could give up the idea of the personality veils, we would be willing to let the personality go. It also, it also means the death of a world savior, for it is the sign of crucifixion and marks the end of a zodiacal cycle. There are 3 signs of salvation in the zodiac. First, Leo, where the word goes out to the human being. Work out your own salvation. So we have in Leo the man determined to stand on his own legs. He becomes bumptious and assertive, but this is necessary to salvation because only by trying out his equipment will he arrive at the point where a broader view appears. The second sign of salvation is Sagittarius, the sign of service and silence, where the assertive man, tired of talking of himself and pushing himself forward, loses sight of himself in the goal and silently serves. Then we come to the third sign, Pisces, that of the world saviors. The first constellation in Pisces is that curious cluster of stars called the Band, connecting the 2 fishes. One fish headed straight to the north, and the other swimming on the horizon. The fish headed toward the north is the symbol of the aspirant to the mysteries, while the fish on the horizon represents the average person. The second constellation is Andromeda, the chained woman. We have 3 women among the constellations. Cassiopeia in Aries, representing matter, seated in her chair dominant. Bernices in Virgo, who sacrificed her hair to be of service, representing the soul only beginning to assert itself, and Andromeda, the chained woman in Pisces, represents matter harnessed. The third constellation in Pisces is the king named Cepheus, the husband of Cassiopeia and the father of Andromeda. This suggests that the king represents the spirit or father aspect. There is in nature the human kingdom, and above it are other kingdoms, spiritual and cosmic, and below it there are the animal, vegetable, and mineral kingdoms. The work of the intelligent sons of God is to act as transmitters via the mind of spiritual energy, which will save and vitalize all lower kingdoms of nature. The second coming of the Christ. Code! Yay! Welcome! Awesome! The second coming of the Christ. How can the world savior come? He might come as he came before, in a physical body with its incidental handicaps. There are emerging in the world today new faculties that were not demonstrating when he came before. We are much more sensitive than we ever were. We are wide open to each other's thoughts, for one thing, and if such a potent thinker as the Christ, whatever we may mean by that word, is in rapport with world affairs, it seems to me he might try another method. He may work with his own in every land, overshadowing his disciples wherever they are found. And because his soul and their souls are one, communicate to them the plan, indicate to them the tendencies, give them the new message, and repeat himself in every country. It is already happening today. In every country, there are to be found those who know. I did not say those who say they know, but there is a group of human beings integrating now who make no noise, are not interested in themselves, but upon whom is laid the burden of leading humanity. They are starting movements that have in them the new vibration. They are saying things that are universal in their tone. They are enunciating principles that are cosmic. They are inclusive and not exclusive. They do not care what terminology a man uses. They insist that a man shall keep his own inner structure of truth to himself and not impose it on anyone else. They recognize each other wherever they meet. They speak a universal language. They demonstrate a universal light. They are servers and they have no interest in themselves. I am convinced that no individual world savior, utilizing a physical body, will come to us. I believe in that individual world savior, but I believe that he will save the world through the group. I believe that he will work through his own, that he is training people now so that the day will come when this group will be so potent through its silent meditation and the force of its world service that it will be recognized as the savior, but not in our day. So the editor's note here. When Alice A. Bailey made this statement in 1963, I've seen 369 three times today. I've seen 11 twice. I've seen 111 three times now, or four. Cool. It appears to have been the ashramic view that the status of humanity would not permit more than an overshadowing by the Christ. When the reappearance of the Christ, dictated by the Tibetan, appeared in 1948, the disciple of the war, the destruction of material values, the suffering, and the mental growth of humanity had produced an effect which we are told exceeded the expectations of the hierarchy. In the book on the reappearance of the following statements are found. The point of decision, as it is called in all hierarchical circles, was reached during the period the full moon of June 1936 and the full moon of June 1945. The point of decision covered, therefore, 9 years, a relatively brief time. It resulted in the decision arrived at by the Christ to appear or return to visible presence on earth as soon as possible and considerably earlier than had been planned. It is indeed a momentous thing to realize that humanity could so notably affect the time and manner of the reappearance of the Christ by a change in its receptivity. We have repeatedly been told that only humanity can condition these points. There is a dramatic instance. Humanity's potential and responsibility is speeding up the evolutionary process. Thoughts? And yeah, working together, right? All right. The new group of world servers. Such a group has just been described. Such a group, as just been described, already exists. There are two things for us to do. First, to learn to recognize the new note as it comes from disciples wherever found, and secondly, fit ourselves to form part of that group. The hallmark of those people is not self-assertiveness. They are too busy doing salvage work to have time to talk about themselves. They work through meditation, which keeps them in touch with the spirituality that is themselves, and therefore is in touch with the great life, the world savior, who pours his force and energy through them and towards the world. They orient their minds in that direction, serve intelligently, and are not in a hurry. The message that comes to them from the inner side is couched in the symbolic words, "What I tell you in the dark, that speaks to you into the light." I gotta do that again. What I tell you in the dark, that speak you in the light. Each one will be told a different thing according to the need of the people around him, and will deliberately go into the dark in order to deliver a message in the light. Therefore, we are tied by no dogmas or doctrines because they have the word which has come to them in the dark, which they have wrought out for themselves in the strife and stress of their own souls. They meet the need of their fellow man, and theirs is the message of Christ. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. This is no sentiment. Let us be loving and kind. That is just decent behavior, but the love that Christ enunciated is an intelligent understanding and appreciation of the need of the individual just as you find him. What? I don't think I understood that. That is just decent behavior, but the love that Christ enunciated is an intelligent understanding and appreciation of the need of the individual just as you find him. When you are up against the desperate need of people, you have no time to think about being loving in the usual sense. You can perhaps create such an atmosphere around yourself that they will think themselves through to their own solution. That is the real way to work. As long as you are occupied with being loving, you are occupied with your own personality. As long as you are occupied with being loving, you are occupied with your own personality. A new commandment I give you can be summed up in inclusiveness, the hallmark of the new age, the universal spirit, identification, oneness with all your fellow men. That is love, and it will keep you busy. You will have no time to talk about love. You will be busy doing things, big things and little things, unimportant and important things. How shall we fit ourselves to meet that requirement, to possess those characteristics which automatically puts us into the group of world servers? You will never get there by talking about it or by theoretical appreciation of the problem. You will get there by doing the next thing correctly. That sounds very uninteresting, but whatever is your duty, do it. Cultivate the right inner attitude and be wide open to all your fellow men. Learn to meditate and really learn to meditate. I'm not talking of entering into the silence, of sitting down and having a blissful and peaceful time emoting, hoping that you will get up feeling better. Meditation, when rightly carried forward, is hard mental work, for it means orienting the mind to the soul. And you cannot do it. It means that when you have learned to focus your mind on the soul, you must hold it steady, which you cannot do. And when you have learned to do that, you must learn to listen in your mind to what the soul is telling you, and that you cannot do. Then you must learn to take what the soul has told you and form it into words and phrases and throw it down into your waiting brain. That is meditation. And it is by following that process that you will become a world server, for you will then be the force of what you have accomplished. You will automatically find yourself overshadowed by the Great One, whose mission it is to lift humanity out of the darkness into light, from the unreal into the real. That's a lecture by Alice A. Bailey, 1963, edited and condensed. Okay, so we've just got a little bit left here, y'all. This is like a little wrapping it up chapter. The purpose of the study of the Hercules myth. And there's an asterisk right there, and it's connected with the following material was prepared by Dorothea Cochrane at Mrs. Bailey's request and was found among her papers. This excerpt seems to provide an appropriate concluding note for the Hercules series. Okay. So yeah, the purpose of the study of the Hercules myth. The first scriptures for the human race were written by God on earth and heavens. The reading of these scriptures is science. Familiarity with the grass and trees, the insects, and in infusoria teaches us deeper lessons of love and faith than we can glean from the writings of Fenelon, and Augustine. The great Bible of God is ever open before mankind. It's by Albert Pike. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork. Okay, let's try again. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork. Psalms 19:1. The progress of a world disciple is illustrated in the heavens by the labors of Hercules through the zodiacal signs. It is as though God has pictured in place. It is though God had pictured in space his plan for the working out of the evolution of the human spirit back to its source. The intense interest evinced The intense interest evinced at this time in the spiritual life is, in itself, the warrant for such a study as the Labors of Hercules. Academic, dogmatic, and theological religion has no longer its ancient appeal, but in spite of a widespread revolt against organized or ecclesiastical religion, the urge towards the spiritual realities has never been more keen than it is today. The period of empirical experience on a large scale is with us. Men and women everywhere are refusing any longer to believe the authoritative pronouncements of the churches or to accept blindly the dicta of any theology. They are determined to know for themselves the facts of the inner mystical experience, if such facts can be ascertained, and to grasp for themselves the nature of that identity which we call the soul. I swear I've already read this from this book. The world setting is ripe for a renewal of a living faith and religion which will be based upon personal knowledge and not upon the pronouncements of the interpretations of limited minds. Dr. Rufus Jones, the great Quaker leader, calls attention to this fact in words which are worth noting. Quote, "An outbreak of mysticism is always a sign that the soul of man is uttering a vigorous protest against the encroachment of some organized system of life, which threatens to leave scant scope or area for its own free initiative and its spontaneous creative activity. It is the proclamation that the soul has certain inherent rights and capacities, a dominion of its own, which must be respected and held sacred. Sometimes mysticism has been the protest of man's spirit against the hardening crust of dogma, sometimes a revolt against ecclesiasticism." A revolt against ecclesiasticism. I think I had just said it even. Ecclesiasticism. The Philosophic Basis of Mysticism by T.H. Hughes, page 46. In days of darkness and apparent spiritual deadness, this revival of interest in the higher realities inevitably appears, guaranteeing that the spirit of man is on its way, and that the reality remains unchanged behind the changing surface of material events. The very need of the hour calls for the sounding of a clear note, and to the newly emerging mystic and knower is given the task of this sounding. What we find in the mystic is an intensified organ for the affirmation of the reality of God and for the richer interpretation of his character. With these clear words, Dr. Jones calls our attention to the work eternally done in the spiritual field by the awakening seeker. Truth is phoenix-like, emerging anew in the field of human experience, but it will be the truth which is felt and known, and not the truth which is enforced through authoritarianism and ancient tradition. For truth, as Bernard Shaw tells us, is what you know by your experience to be true and feel in your soul to be true. Such renewals of the spiritual life of the race are recurrent and public, and cyclic. They can be of an emotional or an intellectual nature, but they serve to lead the subjective life of the race into a new and richer phase of experience, and to offset and sometimes to interpret the more material and scientific uh, paralleling trends which can be seen. The problem of every writer and teacher today is to discover new ways in which to express the same foundational truths, and so to present the ancient formulas and rules of the road which will lead man to the next stage in his spiritual development. The old truths will then acquire new meanings and vibrate with fresh life. There have been many books written upon the subject of the path of discipleship. Restatement of the problems encountered to be encountered upon the universal path, and analysis of the difficulties to be faced whilst treading it is not warranted unless the application can be general, practical, and couched in such terms that meets the needs of the modern student. A study of the 12 labors of Hercules, covering as they do every aspect of the disciple's life, may enable us to achieve a different attitude and release us into that joy on the path and that freedom in service, which is a more than adequate compensation for the temporary losses and momentary distresses which may try the lower nature. One of the great revelations, which has come almost unnoticed to humanity during the past century, has been the slow dawning upon our consciousness of the fact of our own inherent essential divinity. Men are recognizing that they are in very truth made in the image of God, and are one in nature with their Father in heaven. Today also, the purposes and plans underlying God's creative work are being studied widely from both the scientific and religious angles, bringing definite changes in man's attitude to life as a whole. It is in this unfolding plan for the man, individual and racial, that is revealed in the story of this ancient Son of God. We are given a synthetic and complete picture of the progress of the soul from ignorance to wisdom, from material desire to spirit aspiration, and from the blindness of infant humanity to the pure vision of those who see God. A point is reached in the story where intelligent cooperation with sole purpose takes the place of blind endeavor and struggle, and Hercules, who is a son of God as well as a son of man, can proceed upon the way with his face turned towards the light, irradiated by the joy of those who know. This old tale leaves untouched no phases in the life of the aspirant, and yet links him ceaselessly with cosmic enterprise. Its theme will be found to be so inclusive that all of us, immersed in the problems of life, can make application to ourselves of the tests and trials, the failures and achievements of this heroic figure who strove centuries ago towards the same goal as we are striving. Through the reading of the story, fresh interest in the spiritual life may be evoked in the mind of the bewildered aspirant, and he will go forward with fresh courage as he gains a sequential picture of universal development and destiny. We find, as we study this ancient myth, that Hercules undertook certain tasks, symbolic in nature, but universal in character, and that he passed through certain episodes and events which portray, for all time, the nature of the training and the attainments which should characterize a son of God, marching on towards perfection. He stands for the incarnated, but not yet perfected Son of God, who, at a particular stage in the evolutionary cycle, takes his lower nature in hand and willingly subjects himself to the discipline which will eventually bring about the emergence of his innate divinity. Out of an erring but sincerely earnest human being, intelligently aware of the work to be done, a world savior is created, and we see in the last two labors how that work of saving was carried out. Three great and dramatic stories have been told constantly to mankind down the ages, those of Hercules, the Buddha, and the Christ, each of them portraying one of the stages upon the path of divinity. In the story of Hercules, we have portrayed for us the experiences of the path of the discipleship and the early stages of the path of initiation. In the case of the Buddha, The story starts later than that of Hercules, and we see the Buddha achieve final illumination, passing through initiations of which Hercules knew nothing. Then came the historic Christ, embodying in himself something so ineffable that we regard him, in a unique way, as the representative of God. These three stories progressively reveal God's plan for man's development and call us to follow in the steps of Hercules, who trod the path of discipleship and attained this goal. The oracle has spoken, and down the centuries the cry has gone forth, know thyself. This knowledge is the outstanding attainment upon the path of discipleship, and it is seen how sequentially and intelligently Hercules attained this knowledge. We see him passing around the great pathway of the heavens, and in each sign performing one of the 12 labors, which all disciples are called upon to perform. We see him from two viewpoints, that of the individual disciple and that of the humanity as a whole, the great world disciple of which he is the prototype. It is possible to regard humanity as having reached, en masse, the stage of the aspirant, and to regard the race as standing upon the probationary path, the path of purification. If suffering is the great purifier, then the above statement is indeed true. Men today are intelligent, earnestly seeking a way out from the present material impasse, and learning to coordinate their abilities and capacities, mental, emotional, and physical, in an effort to rise above all that has hitherto held them down to earth. This stage has always been expressed by the more advanced types of men, but never before has the entire human family been in this condition. Herein lies the wonder of past achievement, and herein lies the hour of our wonderful opportunity. We find Hercules starting at this point and passing through varying experiences until he comes to the open door in Leo, through which he can pass on to the path of discipleship. We see him learning the lessons of equilibrium, of selflessness, and of victory over the desire nature until he becomes the one-pointed disciple in Sagittarius, prior to passing through the gate which leads to the Mount of Initiation. Slowly and painfully, he learns the lessons that competition and selfish grasping must disappear, and that the seizing of anything for the separated lower self is no part of the mission of a son of God. He finds himself as an individual only to discover that individualism must be intelligently sacrificed to the good of the group. He learns that personal greed has no place in the life of the aspirant who is seeking liberation from the ever recurring cycle of existence and constant crucifixion upon the cross of matter and form. The characteristics of the man immersed in form, oh, yeah. The characteristics of the man immersed in form life and under the rule of matter are fear, individual competition, and greed. These have to give place for spiritual confidence, cooperation, group awareness, and selflessness. These have to give place to spiritual confidence, cooperation, group awareness, and selflessness. These are the lessons which Hercules brings to us. This is also the story of the cosmic Christ, crucified from the beginning of creation upon the fixed cross of the heavens. This is the story of the historical Christ, given us in the gospel story and enacted for us 2,000 years ago in Palestine, when our sun entered the sign of the world Savior, the sign of Pisces, the fishes. This is the story of every individual man crucified upon the cross of matter and of existence, and discovering that he is in truth a son of God, incarnated in each human being, God incarnate in matter. Such is the story of the solar system, the story of our planet, the story of every man. As we look at the starry heavens above us, we have this great drama eternally pictured for us. The end. Wow! I think that's the same as the opening. I think that's the exact same thing I read at the beginning. I loved it. I loved it both times. So dang. Ooh, sweet. Dude, there's a whole summary back here. Ooh, this is great. just for my own self. Oh my gosh, it's like they took notes for me. Dang, dude. This is a gem. Thank you so much, you alls. Oh, we did it. Okay, so yeah, I've got like, I'm so glad we did this. I don't know if I'm going to stream tomorrow or not. I might take the day off to get into some other things. Yes, you do. Everyone needs this book. Well, I mean, not everyone, right? But lots of people. It's so good. Code, you have to go watch Scorpio, man. I'm telling you. I think it's part 6. It's the last one. It's so good, dude. The Hydra. Holy crap. I love you all. And yeah, I gotta pee something fierce. And it's time to do a little bit of relaxing. I worked this morning too. But dang, how uplifting, man. There's so much in here. I appreciate yous. And I'm going to be reading some more coming here soon. I'm not sure when, but it's going to be fun. And you're welcome to be a part of it. We'll be learning new things. I will be. You can learn with me. So yeah, I'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Mwah! Until then, I say end.